All right, so this is our API valve. The API valve, this is our competition's API valve. So this is a Ferris valve. I don't know if any of you have seen this type of valve, but it's basically the same. The U.S. manufacturers, Crosby, Ferris, they basically do everything the same way, and the same that they've done for 50 years or so. So there are a few differences. Safety relief valves do the same thing. They relieve pressure out of a vessel, which we've talked about. But the way that we designed our valve we think is a little more higher quality than the competition. So what I want to do is just have you guys slowly, like if somebody wants to get their hands on, and maybe somebody here can take apart one of the laser valve. That way I can point out some of the differences. You want to get in here? So obviously they both have a airtight cap. You want to take this one apart? Hang on a second. I want to point out some differences as we do this. So they have a gasket between the bonnet and the cap of the valve. On ours, we have a machined gasket, and you can pass that around. It's a metal-to-metal seat, and it seals the valve off from. Anybody else want to? It's just a machined gasket in there, so we don't need any extra pieces or parts. So when you pull it, huh? Good? Okay. Yeah, that's a difference, and we don't need as many pieces. So in the top of the valve, you'll see that the adjusting screw is a little bit thicker than their adjusting screw. And then the top of the valve, the top of the spindle, or they call it a, what do they call their spindle? Stem. They call it a stem, so you may be used to a different terminology. But the fact that their spindle or stem moves about freely in there, it's not as tight. Ours is pretty stout, so it doesn't move. So you guys can both go ahead and take out the adjusting screws. You can leave the lock nut on. So you'll notice on the adjusting screw for the Ferris valve or the competition, and I'm pretty sure that Crosby does the same thing. I may be wrong, but they have a taper at the bottom of their adjusting screw. That's just tapered. Ours is flat, so it's just a little more beefy. And also what we incorporate into all of our spindles on all of our valves is PTFE material on the inside as a bushing. Sure. And that it's not a metal-to-metal seating surface on the spindle and the adjusting screw. So there's a little bit of bushing. And it also is the top guiding surface for when we want to ship and install our valves horizontally. You'll notice too the height of, well, on this valve it's basically the same, but this is a little bit bigger of a valve. I think this is maybe a 2x3, and sorry, I think this valve for us is a 1.5x3 or a 2x3. So this one's a little bit bigger, and the bonnets are actually about the same height. I'm going to take these off here. Yeah, so ours is a little bit taller, and what that does is it compensates for a taller spring. So the spring range on our valves, we can set a much broader range of pressure, set pressure, with this spring than the competition can with theirs, because theirs is just a little bit smaller, but I've seen some springs in valves that are, really, really short. Okay, so maybe our range for this spring is between 95 and 115 psi, whereas the competition, theirs may go from 5 to 10. I don't know. And also the fact that you have to change it out when you change the medias. You may also have to change out some of the other components of the valves to switch from a different media for gas, steam, and liquid. With us, you don't have to change anything out. So another point on our adjusting screw, you can take and spin it around. It's got a bearing in it. And on theirs, they just put some grease on there and hope that it doesn't turn the whole valve. And how we accomplish that, we do have the bushing here, but also we put an axle needle bearing in the top of our the top spring plate, so that when you're adjusting the adjusting screw, there isn't any galling or anything like that. The adjusting screw fits nicely inside of there. So obviously this isn't a spring in this one. This is just demo valve, so the springs are going to look a little bit different. It's cardboard. So that's their spring plates. Now you can take our spring off. You can take the spring. Oop. Okay. And you'll notice, and I think also with the competition, you have the springs all have the part numbers on them telling you what spring it is. And you can see it there on ours. Another thing I want to point out too is when you take their spindle out, their spindle is two-piece and it has a braking surface or braking area. So that's why they can't install their valves horizontally, and they always have to be upright and vertical. Ours is pretty, you can take it out. It's a one-piece spindle, and it also has a guide that guides the bottom part. So you have two guiding surfaces and not a very heavy disc that you can actually install these valves horizontally. I'm sorry, I forgot to go through the presentation on horizontal installation with you guys, but we can install them horizontally if you have space constraint or anything like that. Okay, so they have a gasket on top of their guide, right? Let me go ahead and take this off, I guess. So their spindle, for some reason, they designed it with a thread there. Ours, we don't have that. We have a split ring that is attached to the spindle, and that's how we transfer the energy from the adjusting screw down through the spring to this. There is a little clip that goes on here. These are just split rings. A little clip that goes on there, but that's not really, that doesn't do any, hold any weight or isn't really a functionality of the valve. It just keeps the spring plates together while you're putting the valve together. So actually the diameter of this split ring holds these together and holds majority of the pressure. So if you didn't have this, you could put this valve together and it would work just fine. And it's not going to come apart. But for assembly purposes, we include this, and it just clips it on there. So they have a guide in theirs. It's metal to metal, it looks like. Yeah, 316 on probably 316. And then there's their disc assembly. It's all threaded pieces. You need some tools to take it apart. So you need a tool to take that apart there. How we do ours, there's the 420 stainless steel bushing inside of here that actually you can spin it, and it's not 316 on 316, so there's not going to be any galling. There won't be any sticking. So you can pass that around. What we do include in all of our API valves have a lift restrictor, and that just restricts the lift to a certain, so that we relieve a certain capacity. Can everybody see? So there's just a little lift restrictor on there, and that hits the guide when the valve comes up. And how we affix our disc to our spindle is we have a plug. It's just a little screw. And there's a series, let me put this back in. So our disc also spins on our spindle. And we do that by having a series of ball bearings inside and a floater ball, which just allows the disc to seat properly by to where it can come back down on the seat, and it's got a little bit of float. And that's what that does. So I couldn't get this off yesterday, and I probably won't be able to today. So I'll show you on a different disc. But we affix our lifting aid onto the disc with a piece of metal wire. It's been taken apart and put together so many times that it's not going to come apart very easily without tools. But I can show you. They use the same method of fixing the lifting aid to the disc on this type of disc. This is for our compact valve. So that's, he's getting a lot of feedback in his headset over here. Okay, yeah, that's good. So there's a gasket that clamps it and makes sure that we don't leak at this connection. They also have a gasket. It's a metal gasket that they put in there. Now, something I want to point out in our valve, well, we have the blowdown ring inside of there. You guys are all familiar with the blowdown ring, right? Basically, it helps create a huddling chamber, so it helps the disc lift as well as the lifting aid. So this directs the media back down. To adjust this blowdown ring up, it creates a smaller area that allows the disc to rise quicker. And the difference between our blowdown ring and their blowdown ring, I'll show you. So we have a pin that holds ours in. It's got a gasket on there, little metal stainless steel gasket, so that it doesn't leak. And it's a pin, basically, that holds. It holds on this blowdown ring. And we have some numbers on the blowdown ring and whatnot, if you guys want to pass that around. They also have a pin on theirs with a gasket. So the thread on the inside here. I can show you on the nozzles as well. But the thread is a finer thread because they have to make more adjustments up or down. And they also, the competition has more notches to lock the pin in. So you really have to fine tune the valve once you get the valve set, after you've changed out all the pieces and parts that need to be changed to convert it to like a liquid or a gas or steam valve.
No sé si puedes ampliar un poco la explicación de la regulación. ¿Cuándo lo subo? ¿Cuándo le bajo?
Okay, yeah, for us, we set ours all the way down and lock it in place. We don't touch it because our valve is designed as a single trim. It was what we spoke about earlier. Single trim, you can move the valve from steam, air, or liquid. And we don't have to change the setting on our blowdown ring. For our competition, they say for steam, you have to adjust maybe 5 notches or 10 notches. So you bring it down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. For steam, air, or liquid, maybe they have 15 notches down. So from what I've heard is how they set these valves is they'll put this up, they'll put their disc and put the valve together and adjust it down from the inlet or from the outlet. So they'll take something and move it notches to set it. And there's, I know Ferris has a number of notches that you have to have a flashlight and go in there and move them to set the valve properly for steam, air, or gas. And if everybody remembers the huddling chamber from before, to move this closer to the disc creates more of a huddling chamber. So the media comes in the valve and shoots down, and it bounces off here and creates a friction basically and helps the valve lift. Now this isn't the nozzle nozzle's in here. And this just is, you can adjust this for the huddling chamber only. For us though, we put it all the way down and lock it in place. The reason we put it in there is because everybody's used to it. In the United States, when they designed these valves, they actually used them all the time. And so everybody's used to having them in there. For us, when we designed our valve, we machined all of our pieces to work properly on all the different services, all the different medias. So we put that in there as kind of just because everybody was used to it. We didn't want to make our valve completely different because people would be scared off by purchasing our equipment. So we just added it. It's just something like an earring. It's just for looks. So what we do with ours is we just set it all the way down and lock it in place, and it's done. This is somewhat fragile, and so to have that be protected by the bonnet or the bellows shield is a good thing. Our competition does not do that. So when they put their valve together, they have this all sitting in the valve, and when the ultrasonic pressures comes in from the valve going off, this gets damaged in most cases. In ours, you're not going to have much of that because it's shielded. This also comes apart. This piece, it does come assembled, but it comes apart. The end of the spindle gets threaded into the tip of the bellows, and the guide threads onto the bellows. And there's a machined gasket there as well. So it's a metal-to-metal seat that cuts into the guide. And I think you were asking before about how this works. I was saying, well, you had is that this is for demonstration purposes. It does fit in this valve, but I don't think it's the right bellows for this valve because the diameter of the bellows should be the same as the diameter of the disc. So that when the forces, when the back pressure comes in, the pressure that pushes down on the disc is the same that pushes up on the bellows, and that's how it works. So I'm going to convert this. The pieces that you'll get in the kit is these, also longer studs because this spaces the bonnet up. And then you'll get 3 gaskets. They don't look like this. They're going to look flat and nice, new. So, any questions this far? Well, it could pop out. So the one other thing that you would want to do is vent the rest of the valve. Because what the bellows basically is doing is closing everything off down into the body of the valve. There's nothing's going to get up into the top of the valve unless the bellows busts. So you would take this plug out of the bonnet. And
Queda hermética la parte de arriba. Queda hermética la parte de arriba. ¿Quieres hacer una pregunta?
Sí, la consulta era tanto en estas válvulas como antes de poner el accesorio. ¿Es hermético la parte superior o no necesariamente?
yes, the upper part is airtight. In case there's a back pressure, that stuff, media doesn't get all over your valve when it opens. So if there's back pressure and the valve opens, you don't want stuff leaking out of your valve from all the different connections of the valve. So yes, it's airtight before you put the bellows in. The whole valve is shell tight. And that's what we were talking about earlier too, when we take a conventional valve, and even in this case, we would take this valve and we apply inlet pressure to the outlet of the valve, and we spray it with like a chemical, or not chemical, like a bubble tester, so that if there's any leaks of air, we'll see it, and then we'll fix it before it leaves. So every valve that we do 3 different tests. We test the inlet, the set pressure that it works. Then after we do that, we bring the set pressure down to 90%. And then we measure the bubbles from the outlet. And then we take the valve and we put it on the bench and we test. We put 90 PSI or 3 bar in the outlet and check it. Make sure it's not leaking on all these different seals. Because otherwise media would get all over the place, or could if you have back pressure. So when you isolate the bottom of the valve, you want to vent this. There's a plug, so you might as well pull the plug out, but you can also vent it with, like a open lever, open lifting device. Usually we use the lifting devices on steam or hot water above 140 degrees when you use a lifting device. And I want to show you how to assemble and disassemble a lifting device, this one. So we have multiple different lifting devices. We have the open, which means that air can escape the top of the lifting device, and also a packed lifting device. If you can imagine, this piece isn't here, so this is just closed. We put this on the valve, and you can open the valve, but everything's tight still inside of the shell. Obviously, if this is the cap or the lifting device you choose, vapor could escape. In this case, it will not. So this is just 2 options. We also have, for some of our other valves, we have air, pneumatic lifting devices where you activate it with air pressure and the valve would open. So in this case, I want to show you how to assemble the lifting device real quick. So we always at Laser like to position our lever to the back of the valve so that when you relieve it, the fluid blows away from you. So we position our valve. We have a little piece of Teflon or PTFE material that we actually thread, lock this into position with the PTFE material so you don't damage the threads. But we lost that yesterday. Sorry, I forgot to do this. This gives the spindle something to, or the lifting device something to lift the spindle with. So sorry. Put our lever in, and then we lock it in with a pin and then a little clip. That way you can lift the valve. And try.
Nice.
Now, you're lifting it now because the set pressure is like, you know, under 100 psi. These are meant for when the valve is in service and it's close to the set pressure, so you can test the valve and make sure it's functioning properly. If this valve was set at 1,000 psi, this would never hold. You would never be able to open the valve just sitting here like this.